Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital official channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up.
The mystery surrounding Drew Cain's shooting may be solved by Nathan West, according to General Hospital spoilers. Is it going to be the detective's return to the force? Fans of GH are aware that Nathan is keen to return to the PCPD and resume his criminal investigations, but Anna Devane recently put a stop to it. Without knowing more about Nathan's whereabouts and activities during the past 7 years, Anna is unsure if he will ever be allowed to return to work. Regarding Nathan's absent period, there are many unanswered questions, but perhaps his work will soon be able to speak for itself. Nathan could be able to regain his previous position if he can demonstrate that he is prepared to take on new challenges. In the upcoming episodes, when Nathan finally catches up with Lulu Spencer, she may ask him for assistance in solving this murder. While Lulu's suspicions about Michael Corinthos are intensifying, she is displaying some empathy for Willow Tate. If Nathan could demonstrate that someone other than Willow shot Drew, it would undoubtedly benefit Nina Reeves and her daughter. Nathan might be slightly more inclined to look into this situation as a result. Since Nathan hasn't had his badge back yet, he will need to start this investigation informally. Nathan's possible strategy might succeed as long as he doesn't go too far in revealing the truth. Finding the true culprit could help demonstrate that Nathan still possesses the skills necessary to be a successful police officer. Nathan might be able to cleanse Willow's identity and ultimately bring down the guilty party. Nathan could be able to become a detective again more quickly because to his remarkable investigative abilities. Will Nathan solve Drew's case and grant him his wish? Nathan would be overjoyed to return to the force and resume investigating crimes. According to General Hospital spoilers, Drew's shooter mystery will present some unexpected turns, so keep an eye out for any shocking information Nathan may learn. The morning air in Port Charles carried a quiet tension, the kind that hinted something monumental was about to explode. At General Hospital, the sterile white walls couldn't contain the whispers that had begun circulating through town. The name Ronnie was being spoken with a mixture of confusion, fear, and curiosity. For weeks, everyone had been wondering who he really was, what secrets he carried, and why he seemed to be lurking in the shadows of so many lives. Drew Cain stood in the elevator, his mind churning. He'd followed enough leads to know that the truth about Ronnie wasn't simple. But he had no idea that what was waiting for him would shake not only his own world but Jason Morgan's and Michael Corinthos as well. When Drew stepped off the elevator and headed toward the nurse's station, Elizabeth Weber looked up from her charts. "Drew," she said softly, sensing the weight in his expression. "You look like you haven't slept in days." He gave her a faint smile, the kind that barely masked exhaustion. "That's because I haven't," he admitted. "There's something I've been tracking down, something that's about to change everything." Elizabeth frowned, concern knitting her brows. "Does this have anything to do with Ronnie?" she asked. Drew hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah," he said. "And if I'm right, this guy isn't who anyone thinks he is." Meanwhile, at the Metro Court, Jason sat at a corner table with Carly. His piercing blue eyes were fixed on his coffee, though his mind was clearly elsewhere. Carly leaned forward, her voice low but sharp. "You've been off all morning," she said. "What's going on? Is this about Ronnie again?" Jason exhaled through his nose, a muscle ticking in his jaw. "Something doesn't add up," he replied. "Sam said Ronnie showed up at the pier last night asking questions about Drew." "Why would he do that?" Carly frowned. "Because he's shady as hell, that's why. Nobody knows where he came from, who he works for, he's just there. And you don't like that." Jason looked up, meeting her gaze. "No. I don't." Across town, Michael Corinthos was at the Quartermain mansion, pacing near the fireplace. He had just gotten off the phone with Chase, who'd hinted that something big was going down. "Ronnie's been playing both sides," Chase had told him. "But that's not all, he's connected to someone you know." Michael rubbed the back of his neck, uneasy. He hated being left in the dark, especially when it involved his family. Just then, the front door opened, and Drew stepped in. "Michael," Drew said firmly. "We need to talk." Michael turned, eyes wide. Is this about Ronnie? Drew nodded, pulling a folded document from his jacket. You're not going to believe who he really is. At General Hospital's conference room, the atmosphere was thick with tension as Drew, Jason, and Michael gathered. Sam stood near the door, arms crossed, watching the three men closely. Before we start, Sam said carefully, you all need to understand something. This isn't just about Ronnie's identity, it's about what he's been doing in Port Charles. Drew laid the document on the table. I ran facial recognition through every database I could access. Ronnie's real name isn't Ronnie Santos, it's Ryan Stone. Jason's brows furrowed. Ryan Stone, he repeated. Never heard of him. Drew nodded. That's because he disappeared over a decade ago, after being presumed dead. Michael's jaw dropped. Wait, you're saying this guy faked his death? Drew met his eyes. Not just that. He was an undercover operative for the DEA. He infiltrated mob organizations across the country. And now he's in Port Charles, using the name Ronnie. Jason's gaze hardened as he absorbed the revelation. So what's he doing here? Why now? Drew's voice dropped. That's the part that doesn't make sense. But I found something else, a file that was sealed by the Bureau. Ryan Stone had a partner, someone named Frank Barrett. Michael blinked. Frank Barrett? That's Sonny's old alias when he was working undercover in the early 90s. Jason's eyes flicked toward Michael, realization dawning. So Ronnie, or Ryan, has a connection to Sonny? Drew nodded grimly. More than that. According to the file, Ryan Stone was Sonny's half-brother. The silence that followed was deafening. Sam's eyes widened, her hand flying to her mouth. You mean Sonny has another brother? She whispered. Drew nodded slowly. And he's been living under everyone's nose, pretending to be someone else. Michael sank into a chair, disbelief washing over him. This can't be real, he muttered. My father never said anything about another brother. Jason's voice was calm but icy. Maybe he didn't know. Drew looked between them. That's what I thought too, but there's more. Ryan has been gathering intel on all of us. Our movements. Our alliances. Even the Corinthos organization's internal structure. Carly, who had just entered the room, froze. He's been spying on us, she said sharply. For what? Revenge? Drew shook his head. That's the thing, he doesn't seem to want revenge. He's been contacting someone offshore, a handler. The messages were coded, but I cracked part of it. He's looking for something called Project Phoenix. Jason's expression darkened. Project Phoenix? That's the same codename used by Victor Cassadine years ago for his mind control experiments. Drew nodded. Exactly. I think Ronnie's been sent to retrieve something Victor left behind. Sam frowned. But why involve us? Drew looked at her, voice heavy. Because Victor's files mention two test subjects, Drew Kane and Jason Morgan. He's trying to finish what Victor started. Michael stood up abruptly, pacing. So Ronnie, or Ryan, whatever his name is, has been using us as bait? He's pretending to be someone else just to get close? Jason's tone was cold steel. He's been manipulating everyone. Carly folded her arms tightly. We need to find him before he makes his next move. Drew nodded. I agree. But it's not going to be easy, he's already a step ahead. Later that evening, at the docks, the fog rolled and thickened heavy. Jason stood near the water's edge, waiting. He'd gotten a message, an anonymous one, telling him to come alone. The sound of footsteps echoed, and from the shadows emerged Ronnie. His eyes were calm, almost too calm. You found me, he said quietly. Jason's gun was steady in his hand. You lied to everyone, Jason said. Why? Ronnie exhaled slowly. Because the truth would have destroyed everything. Jason didn't lower his gun. Try me. Ronnie stepped forward, the moonlight revealing the faint resemblance to Sunny, same jawline, same eyes. I didn't know who I was until recently, Ronnie said. I was adopted after my mother disappeared. When I found out who my father was, it was too late. Sonny Corinthos. I didn't want to come back as his son. I wanted to come back as the man who could fix what he broke. Jason's expression didn't waver. And how does spying on his family fix anything? Ronnie's jaw tightened. Because I wasn't spying, I was protecting them. Victor Cassidy's people were watching Drew, you, Michael. I had to make it look like I was one of them. Jason's eyes narrowed. You expect me to believe that? Ronnie stepped closer. I don't care if you believe me. But if you don't stop what's coming, everyone you care about will pay the price. Just then, Drew appeared from behind a crate, gun drawn. It's over, Ronnie, he said. Ronnie turned, sighing. You shouldn't be here, Drew. You made it my business, Drew shot back. You used me. Ronnie shook his head. I saved you. The files Victor left behind, they weren't just experiments. They were blueprints for something worse. Someone else has them now. Jason's voice was low. Who? Ronnie met his gaze. A man named Archer. He runs the remnants of Victor's organization. And he's coming for Michael next. The words hit like a thunderclap. Drew glanced at Jason, then back at Ronnie. Why should we believe you? Ronnie's voice broke slightly. Because I'm already dying. Victor's serum, it's in my system. I've got weeks, maybe less. But if you don't stop Archer, everything Sonny built, everything you love, will burn. Jason's grip on the gun faltered slightly, the weight of truth settling in. Drew lowered his weapon just an inch. If what you're saying is true, then help us stop him. Ronnie nodded slowly. I will. But you need to trust me, just once. Hours later, Jason, Drew, and Michael sat together in the Quartermain living room. The air was heavy, the silence unbearable. Michael finally broke it. So, what now? He asked. Jason's voice was firm. Now we find Archer. We protect the family. Drew looked down at the file in his hands. And we figure out if Ronnie's telling the truth. Michael shook his head. After everything he did? He's Sonny's brother. That changes everything. Jason's eyes met his. Yeah. It does. The next morning, word spread fast through Port Charles. Ronnie Santos was really Ryan Stone, the long-lost son of Sonny Corinthos' first love, a truth buried for decades. The revelation sent shockwaves through every corner of town. Carly sat at the Metro Court, staring out the window, whispering to herself. Sonny had another son, her voice trailed off. Sam entered quietly, sitting across from her. Jason told me what happened last night, she said. Do you think Ronnie's really dying? Carly sighed. If he is, maybe that's his punishment. But if he's telling the truth about Archer, Port Charles isn't safe. By nightfall, the Corinthos compound was on lockdown. Jason and Drew worked side by side, strategizing their next move. Michael hovered nearby, restless. It's crazy, he muttered. One day we're trying to figure out who this guy is, and the next he's family. Drew nodded. Family or not, he's still dangerous. But maybe he's also our best chance at stopping what's coming. Jason loaded his gun, eyes cold and determined. Then we move fast. No mistakes. In the distance, under the shadow of the harbor lights, Ronnie stood alone, watching the skyline of Port Charles. The truth was out, but the storm had only begun. He touched the locket around his neck, a relic from a mother he never knew, and whispered, I'm sorry, Sonny. I never wanted it to end like this. His breath caught as pain ripped through his chest, the serum burning his veins. He knew time was running out. but before it did, he was going to make sure the people who mattered most were safe. The silence that settled over the penthouse was heavier than any they had ever known. It was a physical presence, thick with the dust of shattered assumptions and the chilling vacuum of revelation. The frantic energy that had characterized the last hour, the shouting, the accusations, the desperate attempts to reason and rationalize, had evaporated, leaving behind three men frozen in a tableau of utter shock. Jason Morgan, his face a granite mask honed by a lifetime of violence and discipline, stood with his fists clenched so tightly that his knuckles were white islands in a sea of taut skin. Drew Kane, his expression a turbulent storm of confusion and dawning, horrific understanding, had taken an involuntary step back, as if physically pushed by the weight of the words just spoken. And Michael Corinthos, the moral center of their fractured trio, simply stared, his mouth slightly agape, his eyes wide with a disbelief so profound it bordered on paralysis. The source of their stupefaction stood before them, a figure both familiar and suddenly, terrifyingly alien. Ronnie, the unassuming, often overlooked, perpetually nervous man who had orbited their lives for months, was no longer Ronnie. The slouched posture had straightened into an unnervingly confident stance. The furtive, shifting eyes now held a steady, almost mocking glint. The man who had presented himself as a low-level informant, a pawn in the great, bloody chess game of Port Charles, had just declared himself the king. "Say something," the man who was not Ronnie said, his voice stripped of its former whine, now low, calm, and laced with a chilling amusement. "I must admit, I expected more from the legendary Jason Morgan and the formidable son of Sonny Corinthos." "Cat got your tongue, Drew?" It was Jason who broke the silence, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "Who are you?" A slow, cruel smile spread across the man's face. It was a smile that transformed every familiar line, every known crease, into something sinister. "Now, Jason, that's the question, isn't it? It's the question you should have been asking from the very beginning. But you were all so busy looking for grand conspiracies, for masterminds in shadowy boardrooms or rival mob bosses in dark alleys. You never once considered the man fetching your coffee, the man listening in the corner, the man you all so easily dismissed as just Ronnie. And for Drew, Jason, and Michael, the revelation of Ronnie's true identity was only the beginning of a battle that would test everything they thought they knew about family, loyalty, and the haunting ghosts of Port Charles that never seemed to stay buried. He took a slow, deliberate step forward, and Drew and Jason instinctively shifted, a unified defensive posture born of countless battles. Michael remained rooted to the spot, his mind racing, trying to recontextualize every interaction, every piece of information, every seemingly insignificant moment through this new, horrifying lens. "My name," the man said, pausing for dramatic effect, savoring the moment of his unmasking, "is Jeremy Girelli." The name landed in the room not with a bang, but with a sickening, hollow thud. It was a name from a ghost story, a name etched on a tombstone in the cemetery of their pasts. To Jason and Drew, it was a name that resonated with a specific, personal history of betrayal and violence. To Michael, it was a name from the cautionary tales his father had told him, a footnote in the bloody history of the Corinthos-Morgan feud. "Girelli," Jason repeated, the name tasting like ash. "Lorenzo Alcazar's man." His right hand, Jeremy Girelli corrected, his smile widening. "His most trusted lieutenant. Until you," he pointed a finger at Jason, "and your brother, Sonny, decided our business arrangement was no longer profitable and that Lorenzo had outlived his usefulness." The pieces, jagged and sharp, began to click into a grotesque picture. Lorenzo Alcazar, the international shipping magnate and arms dealer, had been a formidable enemy years ago. His demise had been messy, final, and, they had believed, had closed that particular chapter of their lives. "You were there," Drew whispered, his memory, a fractured and unreliable thing for so long, now delivering a crystal-clear flash of a long-forgotten face in a crowd, a face younger, harder, but undeniably the one before him now. "At the docks. The night Alcazar was killed." "I was," Girelli confirmed, his eyes glazing over with the memory. "I saw it all. I saw Lorenzo fall. I saw you too," his gaze swept over Jason and Drew, "walk away as if you'd simply taken out the trash. And I made a vow, right there, standing in the shadows with the smell of salt water and blood in the air. I vowed that I would not just avenge Lorenzo. I would destroy you. All of you. I would take everything from you, just as you took everything from him. From me. Michael finally found his voice, though it was strained and thin. All these months, you've been in our homes. You've spoken to my mother. You've been around my son. The thought made him physically ill. You were playing a part. A part? Garelli let out a short, humorless laugh. Michael, I wasn't just playing a part. I became Ronnie. I studied pathetic, desperate men. I learned their tics, their speech patterns, their insecurities. I immersed myself in the role so completely that even I sometimes forgot I was Jeremy Garelli. For years, I built a legend. A small-time, two-bit hustler with a knack for being in the wrong place at the right time. I made sure my path crossed with people on the periphery of your organization. I made myself useful, but never too useful. I was a face you saw so often you stopped seeing it at all. I was part of the scenery. The sheer scale of the deception was breathtaking. This wasn't a plan conceived in weeks or months. This was an opus of vengeance, composed over years with the patience of a master craftsman. He hadn't just infiltrated their organization, he had woven himself into the very fabric of their daily lives, a silent, unobserved thread slowly pulling everything apart. The shipments, Jason stated, his mind, a tactical computer, now running a devastating damage assessment. The ones that were hijacked. The information that was leaked to the PCPD and the DEA. That was you. Of course it was me, Garelli said, almost dismissively. I was your most reliable informant, wasn't I? I fed you just enough truth to make the lies taste sweet. I pointed you toward rivals, toward dead ends. All while I was carefully siphoning your operations, setting you up for falls that would cripple your finances and your reputation. I had access to schedules, routes, security protocols. You handed it all to poor, harmless Ronnie because he was so grateful for the scraps from your table. Drew's mind was reeling, connecting dots that had previously made no sense. The incident with the warehouse fire. You were the one who overheard the plan. You sent us on a wild goose chase while they hit the real target. A classic misdirection, Garelli said with a theatrical shrug. And you fell for it. Every single time. You see, the key to a good con isn't just lying. It's understanding what your mark wants to believe. You wanted to believe there was a simple, external threat. You wanted to believe your inner circle was secure. I gave you that comfort. And while you were comfortable, I was busy. He turned his gaze to Michael, and the mockery in his eyes softened into something colder, more personal. But the financial hits, the lost shipments, that was just the groundwork. The prologue. The true masterpiece was the psychological warfare. The real damage is done not to your bank accounts, but to your souls, to the bonds you hold so dear. A cold dread, colder than any they had felt yet, began to creep up Michael's spine. What are you talking about? The rift, Garelli said softly. The growing, festering distrust between the three of you. Between you and your father. Between Jason and Drew. The suspicion that one of you had to be the leak. The whispered arguments, the sidelong glances, the loyalty that was once unshakable now cracking under the strain. That was my symphony. And I was the conductor. He began to pace slowly, like a professor delivering a lecture to his captive audience. You see, I learned from the best. Lorenzo was a businessman, but he understood the human heart. He knew that to truly break an enemy, you must first turn them against themselves. I couldn't just kill you. That would be a mercy. I had to make you destroy each other. He stopped and looked directly at Drew. Drew, do you remember when you started having those doubts about Jason's motives regarding the new export business? The anonymous tip you received suggesting he was cutting you out? That was me. A carefully worded text from a burner phone you'd never trace. He shifted his gaze to Jason. Jason, the security report that suggested Drew was meeting with a known federal agent in secret? The one that made you question whether his time with the WSB had realigned his loyalties? I planted that report. I made sure it crossed your desk from a source you trusted implicitly." Finally, he looked back at Michael, his eyes gleaming with malicious triumph. "And Michael, the constant, nagging fear that your father's world was once again poisoning your life, threatening your family, your marriage, your future at Aurora? The evidence that Sonny was keeping secrets, that his methods were jeopardizing everything you were trying to build? I fed that fear. I watered it. I nurtured it until it grew into a wall of resentment between you and your own father." The room seemed to spin. Every conflict, every moment of tension that had plagued them for the better part of a year, was now exposed as a carefully orchestrated manipulation. They had been puppets, and Jeremy Garelli had been the puppeteer, his strings invisible, pulling them into positions of anger, suspicion, and paranoia. The foundation of their family, a foundation they had believed was built on bedrock, had been revealed to be sand, meticulously eroded by the man they had considered a nuisance. "You son of a bitch," Michael breathed, the words laden with a pain that was both fresh and ancient. "The art of it," Garelli continued, ignoring the insult, "was in the timing. It was in letting you believe you had uncovered these truths yourselves. I never forced a conclusion. I merely laid the breadcrumbs, and you, in your inherent distrust and your complicated histories, followed them every single time. You did my work for me." Jason's mind was a whirlwind of recalculations. Every operation, every conversation, every piece of intelligence had to be reevaluated. The trust he had placed in his own instincts, in his inner circle, was now a questionable asset. The betrayal was so deep, so fundamental, that it called into question his entire reality for the past year. This wasn't just a spy in their midst, this was a psychological saboteur who had weaponized their own personalities against them. Drew felt a similar, vertiginous disorientation. His own identity had been a battleground for so long, first with the Jason Morgan doppelganger crisis and then with his fractured memories. He had worked tirelessly to build a solid sense of self, to know where he stood with Jason, with Sam, with Michael. Now, he realized that a significant portion of that journey had been influenced, skewed, and poisoned by this man. The paranoia he had felt, the moments of doubt he dismissed as his own insecurities, they had all been engineered. "Why now?" Jason asked, his voice dangerously calm. "Why reveal yourself? You had us exactly where you wanted us. We were tearing ourselves apart. You could have continued." For the first time, a flicker of genuine emotion, something beyond cold amusement, crossed Garelli's face. It was anger. A deep, smoldering rage. "Because you started to fix it," he spat, the calm facade cracking. "Despite my best efforts, despite the seeds of discord I planted, you started talking. You started to remember you were a family. Michael, you reached out to Sonny. Jason, Drew, you had that meeting at the Metro Court and decided to trust your gut over the evidence. You were beginning to rebuild what I had worked so hard to destroy." He slammed his fist on the table, the sudden violence making all three men flinch. "I couldn't allow that. I couldn't stand by and watch my masterpiece be undone by your stubborn, sentimental loyalty. The plan had to be accelerated. The final phase had to begin." "The final phase?" Drew asked, his blood running cold. Garelli's smile returned, more terrifying than before. "The groundwork is laid. The financial hits were to weaken you. The psychological warfare was to isolate you. But the final act is about legacy. It's about ensuring that the names Morgan, Corinthos, and Kane are not just disgraced, but erased. It's about taking from you what you took from Lorenzo and me, a future." He looked at Michael with a predatory focus. "Your work at Aurora, Michael. Your attempt to build something legitimate, something that would carry the Corinthos name into a clean, bright future. Did you really think I would let that stand? The merger you've been brokering with the Japanese investors? The one that will secure Aurora's status for the next decade?" Michael's heart hammered against his ribs. The merger was the most important deal of his career, a deal that would finally, fully, legitimize his family's name and fortune. It was supposed to be secret, known only to a handful of people. "How do you know about that?" Michael demanded, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and fury. because Ronnie was the one who recommended the security consultant who vetted the entire digital data room, Garelli said smoothly. The same consultant who, as we speak, is transferring every proprietary secret, every financial projection, every piece of your intellectual property, to a shell company I control. By the time you walk out of this room, the merger will be dead. Aurora will be facing lawsuits that will make the SEC investigation look like a parking ticket. Your legacy, Michael, will be one of corporate espionage and catastrophic failure. The Corinthos name will be mud in the business world forever. The air left Michael's lungs. It was worse than any physical blow. He had poured his soul into Aurora, into making it a force for good, a redemption for his family's sins. And with a few sentences, Garelli had obliterated it. But Garelli wasn't finished. He turned to Drew. And you, Drew. You've been searching for so long, haven't you? Searching for your place, for your history. You found a family with Scout and Sam. You built a life. But what is a man without his past? What is a father if he can't protect his child? Drew went rigid. You stay away from my family. Oh, it's far too late for that, Garelli chuckled. Those custody documents that mysteriously appeared, challenging your fitness as a father? The anonymous calls to social services, suggesting your violent temperament and unstable past made you a danger? All leading to that hearing next week. The one where a very sympathetic, very well-prepared judge will review your case. A judge who happens to be a very old, very dear friend of the late Lorenzo Alcazar. You will lose your daughter, Drew. You will lose Scout. And you will have to watch as another man, a man I have chosen, becomes the father in her life. The threat was so vile, so deeply personal, that Drew saw red. He took a step forward, a raw, animalistic sound tearing from his throat, but Jason's arm shot out, a steel bar holding him back. Don't, Jason growled. He wants you to lose control. He's right, Garelli said, smiling. I do. But it's so much more satisfying to watch you stand there, knowing what's coming, and being powerless to stop it. Finally, he turned his gaze to Jason, saving the piece de resistance for last. And you, Jason Morgan. The man of stone. The man who feels nothing. What do you take from the man who has nothing left to lose? Jason said nothing, his eyes like chips of blue ice, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. You took my mentor, my future, my life, Garelli said, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. So I will take the one thing that, despite your best efforts, you still care about. The one person whose safety is the cornerstone of your entire existence. Jason's icy composure cracked. Just a hairline fracture, but it was enough. If you touch her. Her? Garelli feigned confusion, then laughed. Oh, no, Jason. Not Sam. That's too obvious. And she can take care of herself. No. I'm talking about the one truly innocent soul in your orbit. The one you would burn the world down to protect. The realization hit Jason with the force of a freight train. Danny, he whispered, the name a prayer and a curse. Your son, Garelli confirmed, his voice silken and deadly. The custody arrangement is so fragile, isn't it? A few signed papers, the goodwill of Sam and Drew. What if something were to happen? What if, during your time with him, he was put in terrible danger? What if there was an accident that could be directly traced back to your world, your choices, your violence? An accident that leaves him scarred? Or worse? He let the horrific image hang in the air. Sam would never let you near him again. Drew would use it to secure full custody. You would be utterly and completely alone, Jason. You would have to live every day for the rest of your life knowing that your son was harmed because of who you are. That is a hell I have been living in for years. And soon, it will be your turn.